over a year ago. For me, it felt like it was this, it was technical, like outer space, like a sci-fi experience. And it made me feel sad and chilly. But now that we are, after so many days and weeks, over a year of this, we are now leaning into what we have available to us to connect with others. And at the end of this evening, I do hope that you will feel warmly connected. Thank you for being here. And a special shout out to those who are here on the Zoom who are not part of the congregation or Tafon. And on behalf of the community, I welcome you here tonight. My name is Laura Turbow, and I am Zooming in from Albany, California, which is right next door to Berkeley. And I'd first like to say thank you so much to Leslie Moss, who reached out to me to help create this special evening for you. Leslie, I can tell you are a mover and a shaker and definitely a connector. Your congregation is so lucky to have you.
You bet, we know.
So I have a small business called Still Life Stories, where I help people share their life stories that are inspired from personal objects. What does this mean exactly? Allow me to give you just an example. One day, one day we will pass on our candlesticks, a teacup, a tchotchke on the shelf, or a kiddush cup to our kids. It's all very nice, but it won't mean much unless they know the stories behind them, right? In fact, they might not even want that kiddush cup. And as we all know, it is just an object, it's just a thing, and it might not suit everyone's taste. For me, what I do want my kids to know is how my husband and I came to choose that kiddush cup after our wedding, to remember how we used it every Friday night since August 1999, way back last century. I want them to know who were the important people we shared Shabbat meals with, what Friday night means to us, the traditions around it, and our own special rituals that our family has created to welcome the end of the week. They might have some memory of telling them, they might have some memory of me telling them, and maybe also experiencing Shabbat. But the story might run thin after a while, or the story might even change. You've all heard of that game of telephone. Do you remember that? Where the kids sit in a circle and you whisper a message into someone's ear, and then they whisper to the next person that same message. But then by the time it gets to the person who started that message, it goes from, I think it might rain tomorrow, to I bought tickets to see elephants in tutus, right? It totally changes. So sharing stories, writing them down, to me, this is one way of making sense of our lives. Reflecting on people, places, and certain moments, keeping them close to our hearts, and then sharing them with others to keep those memories alive, as well as those people, even those who have gone. We can keep them present. I've helped people create books full of photos of their objects and their personal stories to pass down to their loved ones. And here's what I believe, what the rabbi showed on my website. The objects that surround us speak volumes about our lives. They tell our stories. So I'm your host for this evening. You'll be hearing from members of your congregation. We met last week and I spoke about the importance of all this kind of work. And tonight we have 7 brave people who will open up to you and share a story that is important to them. Not only are they brave, and let me tell you, this is not easy to do on Zoom, but they are also generous. They've been very generous with their time to think about their object and their story, and they are generous with their hearts to open up to you tonight. And everyone here in the Zoom room, you might not know it, but you did not come empty-handed. As the saying goes, the good Lord gave us one mouth and 2 ears to encourage us to listen twice as much as we speak. And if you brought 2 ears, that's the gift. From you, I ask for active listening, full response. The speaker is not able to get a feel for the room. They won't be able to hear your oohs and ahs, sighs, and maybe a bit of laughter. So I ask that after our storyteller's words come to a close, offer them an enthusiastic Zoom applause. Okay? And please, I encourage you to put something in the chat. Yasher Koach or thank you. Feel free to ask a question in the chat. Although there might be many, we will not be spending any time in between speakers or at the end to ask questions. That's the tough part for me. But I want to make sure that our Zoom tonight is tight and tidy with timing. But please ask questions of the speakers, and hopefully there will be some follow-ups after tonight. Or maybe even when you see some of our storytellers back in synagogue, hopefully soon, you can reach out to them and let them know that you heard them. And that is what you brought with you tonight, the ability and willingness to hear someone else's story. Thank you. This is the magic of sharing. Thank you. Thank you. I heard that. This is the magic of sharing stories, hearing about someone's life, acknowledging it, maybe recognizing how their story might be similar to one of yours, or you might understand someone else's life a little bit better after tonight. And a bridge is created between two people. So without further ado, I would like to invite our first storyteller, Cricket Handler. And Rabbi will kindly put Cricket and her object up here on your screen. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Laura. And I just want to acknowledge that both my sons, Ethan and Joshua, are here on the Zoom tonight, and my niece and nephew, my sister's children, Nathan and Karen, are here as well, and I'm grateful for that. So I would just begin. Who is Sylvia? What is she? So begins a letter written to my grandmother, Sylvia, soon after she had turned 92. It was a tribute presented to her at a celebration hosted by 30 of her friends in Providence, Rhode Island, and went on to describe her generous and warm-hearted spirit, her fun-loving and artistic nature, and her kindness to all her friends and the community. Grandma treasured that letter and gave a copy to each member of the family. I was fortunate to spend my early years until the age of 16 living 5 doors down the block from Grandma Sylvia, and she was an inspiration to me, as well as a cornerstone of my life. I spent many happy hours in her beautiful home, playing canasta, cooking, listening to music, learning to dance the hula as Grandma twirled in her real grass skirt, and working on decoupage projects. My brother David reminds me that he can remember the smell of the glue and lacquer used to adhere the beautiful cutout paper to boxes and other objects. I can remember the beautiful paper designs, which I would color in with a variety of pencils, and then the very small curved scissors to cut around the flowers and other patterns before we would glue them to the boxes and lacquer over to protect our creations. In 1983, Grandma wrote a book titled Memories Can't Be Bought. That's the book you're looking at here. For the family, detailing the story of her life, starting with her parents, Bela and Louis Borowski, who emigrated from Moscow to Boston in 1884. She shared wonderful reminiscences of her happy childhood with 5 siblings through the age of 77. In remembering stories Grandma told to me and reading her memoir, I recognize the qualities shared by her daughters, my mother and her sister Anne, granddaughters, my sister Deb and myself, and her great-granddaughters, my nieces Karen and Stephanie. Grandma was truly a matriarch of the family, and each of us celebrates her legacy in a unique way. Grandma was a real collector of antiques, particularly small silver pieces, jewelry, and other art objects. She had made a small home business of buying art objects, even going to the refineries where they were getting ready to melt down the silver, bringing it home, cleaning it, and selling it to her many dedicated customers. She scoured pawn shops and flea markets looking for treasures. Before she became ill, my younger sister Deb would come up to visit my mom and me in SLO, and spend hours at Hamilton Jewelers combing through trays of broken bracelets, rings, and other jewelry, eventually combining bits and pieces into beautiful new designs, which she would gift to family members and sell to collectors. We laughed about how she had inherited Grandma's antiquing gene. My brother's daughter, Stephanie, is in the jewelry business, and Deb was certainly a mentor to her before she died. Deb's daughter, Karen, has a home filled with family heirlooms handed down from her great-grandmother, Sylvia, and each piece has its own story. My mom loved to visit flea markets and swap meets with my stepfather, and they were always bringing home things to fix up and use in some way around the house. Although I love beautiful antiques and have several objects that belong to Grandma, it was her love of music that I inherited. She describes evenings with her parents and siblings where they would each play an instrument and spend the time after dinner singing and playing together, inspired by her father's love of music. An object I treasure is a small locket, and I'm wearing that tonight, and you can also see it on the picture, that Grandma wore during World War I when she served in the Navy in South Boston. She entered as a filing clerk, but soon got bored and convinced the big brass of the need for a mess hall. In her entrepreneurial way, she opened a lunch counter, then a canteen to serve the young men coming off ships in the harbor, and finally a musical entertainment show where her sister Trudy played the piano and Grandma played the banjouk, a combination of ukulele and banjo. I started piano lessons at the age of 7, loved to play guitar and sing, and went on to study music in college and graduate school. It took many years, but I finally followed my dream to create a women's choral ensemble, Canzona, and in some way I'm sure I have my grandmother to thank for my love of music. Grandma was a true optimist, and she dedicated her life to helping others. She served in the Council of Jewish Women in Providence and in the Temple Sisterhood. During World War II, she helped run the council house, where they supported wives, mothers, and sweethearts, as she writes in her memoir, of servicemen from Quonset and Newport. She describes that project as one of her most rewarding accomplishments of that time. She organized galas and cultural trips and served on the board of trustees of the temple. My mother followed in my grandmother's footsteps, serving in leadership roles in many organizations and eventually co-chairing a chamber music society when she was living in Oceanside before moving to San Luis Obispo. Some of the sweetest memories of my grandmother are from the times toward the end of her life when I would visit her in Florida at her beautiful home on Ibis Island in Palm Beach. I would go out in the summer when her friends were spending the hot months in Providence, and we would dress up and go out to lunch, Grandma looking elegant in whatever beautiful outfit she had chosen. We would enjoy lunch, always ending with key lime pie, and then spend the afternoon playing cards or just looking out across the broad lawn, stretching down to the Intercoastal Waterway. I last saw her in her 97th year and will treasure those visits always. And so now I'm going to be brave, and I'm going to end sort of the way I started. Thank you, Laura, for prompting me. Let's see. And I opened with, "Who is Sylvia? What is she?" This is the opening of a poem that by Shakespeare, a sonnet, and it was set by Schubert. And so in English, not in German, I will sing you a little bit of the first verse. Who is Sylvia? What is she? That all our swains commend her. Holy, fair, and wise is she. The heavens such grace did lend her, that admired she might be, that admired she might be.
Thank you so much, Cricket. Love that. Thank you. Please make sure to put any comments or questions in the chat. We'll give a little pause for that. And next up, we have Pat Paulson. Thank you, Pat.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be able to tell my story. It's probably a little different than everyone's, being that I am an honorary member of Congregation Ortsophone and definitely considering conversion. And actually, I learned something about, in my little bit of research that I had gone through with this project, I learned that actually my great grandfather, who I'll be telling you about, he converted his religion for his wife to Catholicism. And I thought my family was always had been Catholic. But my object for the life story is a Russian Semibar. And this is what you're looking at here. And I actually have it behind me here as well. If time permits, I'll open the top of it and show you how it really works. It has, for fluid or a candle underneath to keep the cylinder that goes through the middle of it hot. But what is a Russian Semibar? It's really, they call it like a teapot, but it's not like a teapot that you would normally see. And it is pretty large. And how did I obtain this Semibar? It was through an interesting family on my dad's side. My dad was Hugh Thomas Carter, but his grandfather, my great grandfather, happened to be the first delegate, representative, and senator of the state of Montana. And my great grandfather was a child of an Irish immigrant, and they located to the US before he was born. He was born in the US, and they settled in Iowa in 1852. And he was one of two boys, and he was educated by his father, who really had a real passion for learning and for books. And my great grandfather studied law, and in 1881 took the bar in Nebraska, which is, interestingly enough, is where I was born, in Omaha, Nebraska. And then he moved to Helena, Montana. And that's where he met his wife, my great grandmother, Ellen. And he practiced law in Montana. And as a result of practicing law, he then became the first delegate, the first representative and senator of Montana. And he actually won his first campaign amongst the copper lords of Montana, which was a pretty amazing thing. But he became friends with Teddy Roosevelt, President Teddy Roosevelt. And as a result of being friends, this Semibar was given to my great grandfather and his wife, Ellen, my great grandmother, by Teddy Roosevelt and his wife. it's the way it went in our family. And I'll tell you more a little bit about Senator Carter because it's kind of a fascinating story. His wife, when they were visiting Glacier National Park, were at St. Mary's, and it was not a national park at that time. She said to him, you have to go to President Roosevelt and tell him this has to be a national park. It's too beautiful to not have it preserved. And as a result, that actually did come to fruition. And also under his watch, in Montana, there is, at Glacier National Park, there is a glacier and a peak named Carter, Mount Carter and Glacier Carter. And there are two cities in the state of Montana. One's Carter and one's Carterville. And there's a county, Carter, that was named after my great-grandfather. Also, one of his accomplishments while he was between being senator, in between his being a senator, President William McKinley appointed him as a member of the Board of Commissions for the Louisiana Purchase Exposition, and he served as the president on that commission. So this Semibar was handed down in the family and was to go to the oldest son of each generation. Well, when it came to my father's generation, my father had 3 girls. And so there was no son, and I was the oldest. So that's how I ended up with the Semibar. And I do have a son, and I hope that he will want to keep this tradition going. And you don't know in today's generation, being really transparent, I'm going to talk to him here soon, because if in fact it wouldn't carry on, I have spent a lot of time at the Historical Society in Helena, Montana, and there is so much on Senator Carter that I think they would love to have this Semibar and display it, and would carry on, it would carry on well historically. I had this Semibar for over 40 years. My home in San Luis Obispo, where it was displayed so well, was in my dining room, and I loved it there. It just seemed to be the right place for it, and it certainly was a conversational piece. And I have to tell you, when I did go to the Historical Society in Helena, the first person I saw that worked there, I said, I'm here to explore my great-grandfather, Senator Carter. And this man immediately said, oh, we loved Senator Carter. He was a good guy. And if he were still here today, he'd be more Democrat than Republican. And so that surprised me, because I didn't expect that would be. But the other thing that my husband and I, when we went to Helena, we went to the Montana Club. This is a part I knew nothing about. And the maitre d' at the Montana Club was boasting about the things in the history of the Montana Club, that Teddy Roosevelt stayed there. And he brought this big logbook and showed us where he was signed in. And I recognized the handwriting from Senator Carter. I went to this guy, said, oh, that was my great-grandfather. And the guy looked at me like, lady, what are you smoking? But then he realized it was real. And it was, and here's a weird experience. While we were there, I looked across at this cathedral, the Helena Cathedral, which looked like a Catholic church in Europe. And something drew me to that church the next day because I had never been there. And they actually had a big brass monument in the entry to the church, honoring all those people, the people that was the Copper Kings, the Cruz family that built the church. And then all the stained glass in that church was donated by my great-grandmother. So it was kind of an interesting experience. But I have mounds of letters from my great-grandfather to my great-grandmother. And it was so much fun to read those because it was like very casual, like, oh, tonight I'm going to the White House for dinner with President Harrison, and it's like, and I can't, it's hard for me to relate to all of that. But anyway, that's my object. I'm very proud of it, and I'm proud of the history. And thank you for listening and letting me share.
Thank you so much, Pat. That was fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for sharing. Next up, Mindy will be telling us the story about the tallis. Thank you, Rabbi.
Hello, thank you, Laura, and thank you, Rabbi, for asking me to do this. It was challenging and emotional, but I'm here and I'm grateful actually because I really ended up liking it. So hopefully I can get through this. And my mom and my aunt and uncle are watching, so thank you. Okay. Approximately 70 years old, yellowed, stained, and worn, my Grandpa Henley's tallit is imperfectly perfect. I am certain that it has more stories to be told than I know of. Stories of fear, stories of triumph, happiness, and sadness. I believe this tallit has seen it all. Grandpa Henry arrived here in the United States with my Grandma Bella, Basha, in the spring of 1950. Holocaust survivors, they got here with very few belongings, a baby, my mom Arlene, on the way, and a determination to make a decent life for themselves in America. They settled in Toledo, Ohio, where my mom was born just a short 7 months or so later. Nobody recalls exactly when my grandpa purchased his tallit, but my mom feels that it must have been as early as possible so that he could daven in it every Saturday morning at Shabbat services. She and my uncle, her younger brother, both have memories of him wearing it every Saturday morning at shul. My uncle David recalls being a little boy, just 3 or so, attending services with him. My mom and Grandma Bella would be up in the balcony with the other women, and David would be down below, sitting upon a bench next to my grandpa. After some time, David would get a little bit bored and squirmy, and he'd crawl under the bench behind my grandpa's feet to sit and watch. He would wrap it over his head when he would pray, David told me. I remember when I sat under the bench, I would see the seat from his tallis swaying back and forth as he would daven, and that's a really special memory for me, he said. The tallit made its way along Grandpa's journey in America, moving from Toledo, where they first lived, to Detroit, Michigan around 1953, and settling in San Diego, California in 1960. Along the way, Grandpa Henry worked in HVAC. He worked very hard, worked in HVAC and then in sheet metal in San Diego before opening his own business, Henry's Smoke Shop in La Mesa, California in 1961. Here they sold tobacco, cigars and cigarettes, penny candy, magazines, cards, and other gifts. Liken it to today's Hallmark stores. He and my grandmother were very proud to be Americans, and they worked hard to be positive members of their society. In 1963, my grandpa wore his tallit for the last time. He unexpectedly passed away from a tragic medical event leaving behind my grandma, my mom, and my uncle. The talit, once worn every single Shabbat and at holidays and simchas throughout the year, it was stored away someplace safe, a closet or a dresser drawer, I suppose. When I was 13, I was nearing my bat mitzvah. I had heard stories about my grandpa, imagined what he was like, and had longed to know him. My grandma had purchased both of my older sisters their talits for their bat mitzvah and had offered to do the same for me. I apparently had something else in mind. I asked her if I could have my grandpa's talit. Something must have drawn me to it. She was kind enough to do both. She bought a new talit for me and gave me her beloved husband's talit as well. I didn't wear it very often at first, maybe because I was young and I hadn't fully come to understand what it meant to me to have it yet. But somewhere along my journey through Judaism, this talit, it became the single most important item that I own that connects me to my family history and being Jewish. It's unusual now for me to wear my talit. Rather, I choose his, holding it and saying the prayer before gently placing it around my shoulders. Running my fingers through the seat that he did, it all gives me calm and peace when I sit in services for Shabbat or high holidays. The oils from his hands have over time yellowed the seat, and this makes me feel close to me, or to him. I feel his love and pride. While he probably never imagined that his granddaughter would be wearing it, I'm sure that he would be happy that I've given life and use to it. When my husband Derek and I got married on March 24th, 2012, it was a chilly and windy evening. Upon a beautiful hill surrounded by vineyards, each of our parents held Grandpa Henry's talit, lovingly wrapping my husband and I around our shoulders and blessing our future and us during our wedding ceremony. My grandma Bella wasn't able to be there that day. Dementia stole her from us, and she wasn't in much of a condition to be leaving her home for events. The talit was so much more than a prayer shawl that day. It brought my grandparents there with us, which was so important for me. I knew that they would be proud. My husband isn't Jewish, but he has fully embraced me and Judaism in our family. He's supportive and involved in our children being Jewish and having a Jewish home. My grandparents would have been belling over our unique Jewish ceremony. The story of this talit doesn't have an ending that I can see, for I see it having another 70 plus years of stories ahead of us. I see myself continuing to wear it during services and simchas. I see our children, Hannah, who's almost 6, and Jacob, who's nearing 3, growing and hearing the stories of their family and the talit. I imagine them touching the tzitzit as I do, possibly wondering what their great-grandfather was like. Someday, I hope that it will be brought to the bima for their bat and bar mitzvahs, and I would love to see it be involved in a wedding for my cousin, as I'm sure that her Papa Henry would have loved to be there that day, and that it would be meaningful to my uncle as well. The journey of this talit traveled with my Grandpa Henry from Toledo to Detroit to San Diego. It has since resided with me in Fullerton, Huntington Beach, and now Paso Robles. It's a traveling talit of sorts, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where else it will go, what other simchas it will be a part of, and who else will love it and wear it someday when I'm gone. This talit is a part of me, a part of my family, and a part of my future.
Wow, Mindy. Really wonderful. Thank you. Frida, you are up next.
Mindy, that was an amazing story. I am absolutely verklempt. The tears won't stop running down my face. Thank you so much for sharing. Oh my gosh. Okay, you guys. This is a needlepoint. It is my most treasured object. However, it has a bit of a dark history. It's a needlepoint of a lovely family in a courtyard somewhere in Europe. The needlepoint was made by my mother, her older sister, and her youngest sister, Devorah, before World War II, when they lived in Tarnów, Poland. My mom and her older sister Rosa were in the resistance, and they fled Poland before Hitler rounded up all the Jews. The two sisters grabbed what they could, including the needlepoint, as they left their home. As the story goes, they decided they would share ownership of this needlepoint if they survived and were able to hang on to their treasure. It meant the world to them because they soon learned in their travels that Devora, their baby sister, who had the reputation of being the most beautiful girl in Tarnov, had been taken by the Nazis. Now the needlepoint took on an even more important meaning: to keep it safe in their hands. My mother and Rosa survived the god-awful war and went back to Poland at the end of 1945 with the needlepoint still in their possession. The families had to separate because Rosa's husband was very sick. My mother, myself, and the rest of the family opted to relocate to Germany and endured another treacherous 5 years living there before we emigrated to the United States. Rosa kept the needlepoint, and I believe she finished it, because I don't believe the girls had just started it. Her husband finally got better, and they emigrated to Palestine. The sisters, my mother and Rosa, lost touch until 1959, when they were reunited in Israel. At that time, Rosa gave the needlepoint to my mother to safeguard for future generations and to honor their little sister, Devora. By the way, my daughter, Dana, oh my gosh, whose Hebrew name is Devora, is so named to honor my mother's baby sister. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, before my mom died, she passed this needlepoint to me with the understanding that I would be its guardian and safekeeper, and would pass it on to my daughter along with its history. And those of you who know me know and have seen this needlepoint proudly displayed in every home that I've ever owned. Laura, I'm so happy to have participated in this project because now I have a record for future generations who I hope will treasure this needlepoint as I have. Okay.
Thank you, Frida.
Thank you, Laura.
I think I said in the beginning how things have gotten easier on Zoom, that we're connecting, but it is sure hard not to be able to put your arm around somebody and offer a hug. And then
Yes.
send you on your way.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jean Lowe, thank you.
Look at cute.
Jean, you're muted, and Frida, you're unmuted. So if you could switch.
Unmute. Okay, are
Thank
we
you so
there? Okay. Well, following Frida's not an easy job wherever we are, but here I go. My very special, quote, Jewish object is not really an object at all, but my living, breathing daughter, Hannah Louise Lowe. I heard the doctor say, "Do you want a Jewish donor?" And I went, So then you might be asking, why such a question? Well, I got there by deciding I wanted to be a mom. Might have been my advanced maternal age, an actual medical term, which was 35 at the time. Might have been thinking I could raise a child on my own. Might have been that biological clock ticking in my ear. Might have been all sorts of things. But there I was, seated across from the doctor. "Do you want a Jewish donor?" And out of my mouth sprang, "Yes, I do." That single question had not even crossed my mind as I researched to become a, quote, single mother by choice. This was the popular term in 1984. This was in the very early days of sperm banks, and I did not want to look through pages of donors and stats and order up sperm. Also, I did not want to ask a friend because I really didn't want to look into my child's eyes and see him. What I wanted was someone smart and Tay-Sachs negative. I guess Jewish had crossed my subconscious after all. So I decided to go through a private doctor who had access to medical students, handily located right next door. And this was before Google, so I can't quite remember how I got to this particular practitioner. Anyway, he told me he had 2 Jewish donors, but one was not available for a few months. Well, I guess the 6-foot-tall, blonde Jew almost doctor would be the one. Again, decision taken out of my hands. So that was in May of '84, and in February of '85, there she was. When I first saw her face, I said, "That's not Margaret, that's Hannah." I must explain that Hannah had never been on the short list. Truth be told, I was sure she was a boy to be named Marcus after my great-grandfather. I did not know then babies were not to be named after living relatives. My mom and her mom, both Margarets, were alive and well and would remain so for many more years. I guess God took care of that one too. She is the first and only kind of quote, totally Jewish grandchild in our family. Kind of a funny way to say that, but the truth. I've always felt strongly Jewish, but my parents hardly practiced Judaism much. A little Torah school for us, love the singing. A few community seders, parsley still my fave. I wanted more for my little family, so I started by finding toddler programs for Hannah that fit the bill. Then we moved here when she was 3, and Jewish learning went on the back burner. A few years later, she asked to learn about being Jewish. I found CBD, and she went to Sunday Torah school. While she was learning Jewish history, I was learning San Luis Obispo. Then came COT, and things really changed for me too. The kids, as I remember, also had a day of Hebrew school during the week, and we had to attend 3 out of 4 Friday services a month as part of the B'nai Mitzvah track. I started learning lots more than 2, osmosis, I guess. And so this Jewishness, culture, and learning continue on. My very precious Jewish object is what really brought me into a more Jewish way of life, and I can't imagine my life without her. So here to end my story is my living, breathing daughter, Hannah. And that's it.
That's fantastic. Of all the times I've done this, we've never had a living, breathing object.
Well,
Thank
there
you,
she is.
Eugene, so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Hilary Steineker.
Very well done.
Thank you. Oh, look, that looks.
Okay. Hi, everybody. We've been a bit challenged trying to put some comments in the chat column. So I just wanted to say before I start, thank you to everybody for sharing their amazing stories, some amusing, some very touching and emotional, but all very much appreciated. My story is about my mother's wedding dress, which you can see in the top left-hand corner, which is on a hanger. Her dress has always fascinated me, and as a child, I enjoyed dressing up in it. It was unusual, as you can see. It was brown lace and not the traditional white. The reason for this relates to my mother's background. She was born in Liverpool, England, yes, where the Beatles come from, and she was one of 9 children. In the mid-1930s, she traveled to South Africa for her sister's wedding and subsequently met my father, who also happened to be from Liverpool. They met in Port Elizabeth, a seaside town in South Africa, and that's where they got married in 1939. And you can see their wedding picture, and you can see my mother in the dress. It's a very old photograph, so the detail is hard to see. Now, the reason she chose this brown dress was because none of her family could attend the wedding. And my mother didn't want to have a big fuss. So she chose not to wear white, but rather this elegant, sleeveless brown French lace dress with a matching bolero. She completed her ensemble with a wide-brimmed brown hat, which you can see in the photo, and which I loved trying on as a child. And she also had matching brown shoes. Can't see that because the dress goes down to the ground. My mother passed away in 1979. Over the years, her wedding dress traveled with me from South Africa to England, where I lived for 15 years, and finally here to the USA. When I got married in Los Angeles in 1995, I looked for a wedding dress that reminded me of my mother's dress, but in white. And as you can see, this is the dress I found and purchased for my wedding, a sleeveless lace dress with a short matching bolero. In 2016, my niece, who lived in London, England, planned to get married in South Africa, where her parents live. She chose a white lace wedding gown and wanted her retinue to continue the lace theme. When I asked her if I could wear her grandmother's brown lace dress, she was delighted. And here I am with her at her wedding in my mother's brown lace wedding dress. Not only did I feel my mother's presence at her granddaughter's wedding, but her beautiful dress, which had fascinated me for 8 decades, had returned home to South Africa, where it had originated. And now you can see, if I stand up, you can see that the dress is still with me here in America. And I don't know who will be the next person to wear it. I don't know if you, I don't know how much you can see, but there it is. Okay. And that's the story of my mother's wedding dress.
Hilary, thank you so much. Where did she go? Is she still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Just changing.
I'm still here.
Amazing. Thank you. You didn't have to think so hard about what to wear tonight.
That's right.
Thank you so very much. We have our last storyteller of the evening. Red, you are up. Red Stone.
Looks like me.
Thank you so much. Red, you are muted.
There. Am I unmuted?
You are unmuted. Thank you so much.
Get rid of this thing here. There. Now, my story is this. You see the chimes here? Well, these were not working at one time a few weeks ago when my daughter was visiting me, and she came to help me repair it. And we did. We helped her repair it, and it brought to mind an event that's 35 years ago or so, well, when my wife and I went to Hawaii, and here's what happened. My wife was of 70 years. My wife of 70 years was a stay-at-home mother for a long time until she became a nurse. She earned some money, and her desire was to spend that money on not just me, not just herself, but the entire family. So she arranged a trip for me, our two daughters, and our son and his fiance, all to go to Hawaii and enjoy a trip to Honolulu and Maui. She arranged not only the air flight, she had arranged the housing in Honolulu and in Maui, and we all gathered in San Francisco. She arranged that too. We all gathered in San Francisco to take a 747 to go to Honolulu. And we got on the plane, we were about an hour out, and then an announcement over the loudspeaker from the pilot. And he said, "I have some distasteful news for you. We have been informed there's a bomb aboard this plane, and it will detonate if we go below 6,000 feet." So there was consternation, of course. We all wondered what's going to happen? What's going to happen? But Natalie said to me, "What have I done? What have I done? I've taken the whole entire family on this plane." Meanwhile, we heard another announcement from the loudspeaker. It said, "Will the Secret Service and the flight attendants gather at such and such a place?" Why were the Secret Service on this plane? Answer: Ronald Reagan was also in Honolulu, and they were there. They were on plane to guard him. But when they heard the announcement of the bomb aboard, all the Secret Service gathered around, and the flight attendants had her manual looking up. I don't know whether she was looking on a B for bomb or S for scare, but she was looking. And all the Secret Service people and the flight attendants went through every overhead bin looking for the bomb. Meanwhile, the pilot announced, "We have found a destination that is 6,100 feet." Now, 6,100 feet was just 100 feet above the 6,000 feet level, but it would do the trick. And he turned the plane around, and after many hours, we did land the 747 in the very small airport at Colorado Springs, Colorado. It was late at night. The terminal was closed. We were, when we got to the airport, when we got to the landing field, we actually had to go through the exercise of ducking our heads and hiding. And as soon as we got off the plane, there was the FBI with bomb-sniffing dogs. They didn't find anything, and we didn't find any food in the terminal either. Oh yes, we did find a couple of vending machines, which were soon emptied. Well, there we were in our Honolulu-type clothes, in the cold 6,100 feet terminal, waiting what to do. The United Airlines said that they would send us to Denver on a bus, but the hue and cry said, no, we insist that you send us a plane here in Colorado Springs and take us to eventually to Honolulu. And they did. They rounded up a crew and a relatively small plane that took us to Los Angeles, where we boarded a plane to Honolulu. Still had no food, mind you. Still were in our cold clothes, rather with no clothes. I better amend that a bit. we had our clothes, but they were summer clothes, flip-flops and T-shirts and things like that. We had lost a whole day before our luggage finally arrived in Honolulu, and we were able to get out of our dirty clothes and into something. And after a day or so in Honolulu, we planed to Maui, where we went into a condo, which Natalie had rented. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful. And there we were. And our son and his fiance bought those chimes that I show you here on the screen, bought those chimes as a gift to Natalie. We had a wonderful time in Maui. We got back each to our own homes. And then when we got home, I talking to Natalie about the event, and I said to her, I wonder if that man who instigated the crime really knew what he was doing. He had called the United Airlines from jail to ask for a ransom of $50,000 for telling United Airlines what was on the plane. I myself was a little perturbed. I thought we were worth a little bit more than $50,000, but nevertheless, that's what he asked for. And I always wondered, if he had called United Airlines Collect. That's it. And that's my story.
Thank you so much for sharing. I had just in it right here alone, there were many gasps and oh my goodness and laughter. That was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Can I give a postscript?
Please give a postscript.
Well, as I told you, my children were all on the plane, including my now daughter-in-law, and it's been 35 years or so. And I checked some of my facts with them, and would you believe it? There was not agreement.
Okay, well, your story has been recorded, and this is the story we're going with.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I am so thankful for this evening. It has been really amazing. I am in awe of these storytellers. I had spoken with some of them, just as they were thinking about which object to use and, what story to go with it. And I'd seen some of the photos, and I am just really in awe of the stories that people were able to write down and get out to us. That is a lot of different stories for us to think about. And I really hope that when you all see each other, you'll be able to connect with this. And I will make sure to copy and paste the chat from the recording. So those who were not able to look at it, the speakers, if you haven't been able to check it out, I want to make sure that you see all of the comments in the chat. It has been really such a gift to get to speak with you and hear your stories. I always like to end my Zoom events with a parting gift. And last week, at the start of our time together, I asked the participants what objects in their homes have helped them to smile during this last year of sheltering in place. Do y'all remember that? Storytellers, you had to answer that. I heard about a special vase. I heard about music and flowers from the garden and photos of children, a heart-shaped pillow on a bed, and even a plaque for a hole-in-one and a lampshade. I think that was about all of them. But we don't have time tonight to go around and hear from the rest of you about what objects you have in your home that have given you some smiles throughout this last year of sheltering in place. But my parting gift to our incredible listeners, thank you much for being here and listening. My parting gift to you is a two-part question. One, what object in your home has brought a smile to your face over the last year? And two, will you share that story of the object with someone? So I'll leave you with that to answer yourselves. And I'm just so thankful for this evening. And I welcome you to, I don't know if we have the time and space for people to comment or to connect with each other by unmuting yourselves.
I just want to thank everyone. I couldn't do the chat thing, but the stories were amazing, and thank you for sharing.
Me
I
too.
really appreciate
Me
it.
too. Each and every story was touching in some way, and I appreciate everyone who shared.
Laura, is that your daughter on the call?
Mosey,
Hi, so happy you're joining us.
thank you. Thank you. She's here. Thank you. Yes. I had some support team.
I love the variety and the diversity of, from also emotional, such beautiful histories. Yeah, thank you, storytellers.
Thank you for helping put this together, Leslie.
Yeah,
well,
thank you,
one thing
Leslie.
Laura and I talked about that as we're opening up, wouldn't it be wonderful to have like small group storytelling sessions and just like carry this forward? Because I know lots of, we had to limit our storytellers tonight, but I know there are so many of us who have lovely objects that we could learn more about each other by sharing those stories and objects. So yeah, we'll carry it forward. That will be our gift to each other.
Yes, good.
Fantastic. That'd be fantastic. It's so, it's one of our customs, right? As I think I mentioned last week, we read the same book, the story that was passed down every year, again and again and again and again. And we all have our own stories also to pass down. It's just something to think about.
Great, thank you.
Well, when we're in Albany, Laura, we'll come visit you. And when you and your family are ever on the Central Coast, please come visit us.
Thank you very much. I will take that invitation to heart, and I really do. I would love to hear from people after this, and certainly if you're in the Berkeley, Albany area, I would love to connect. It's been really nice. Thank you.
And I also just want to give one more thank you to Leslie for being our connector. She heard Laura and brought this program and brought Laura to our community. And I want to say thank you to her and thank you to all of you storytellers. It was just amazing. Really, what a wonderful night.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Jeannie, I love you. I love your object the best.
I do too. Thank you.
Honey. That
I
was
just have
amazing.
to quickly say, Mindy, when you were sharing your story, Jackie and Jeff, I know you're there. It made me think of Ben when she was talking about her little brother behind the grandpa, behind his legs. It just made me think of Ben during all of our Shabbat service.
I just told that Ben story the other day. I don't know why, but
so
he
wonderful
must be on
stories,
our minds.
wonderful memories. Yeah.
We want to hear more.